All right, part 3, July 3rd. Senior journalist in Pakistan calls army generals property dealers. Assaulted. Of course, पूजा थोड़ी करेंगे बिठा के. A senior Pakistani journalist and political analyst has been assaulted by unidentified masked men who also tore his clothes and as he left his office in the Punjab province a day after he termed Pakistan's powerful army generals property dealers. Ayaz Amir, 73, was returning home late. इतना बुढ़ा उसको भी मारा. Late Friday after recording his television show for Dunya News TV channel where he works as a senior analyst when unknown people stopped his car. The attackers then manhandled him and also tortured his driver before fleeing from the scene. With bruises on his face, Amir said the masked men not only hit him and tore his clothes, they also took away his cell phone and wallet. They left when people started gathering on the busy road. In a tweet later, Amir said those who attacked him did not care about his age. I have no personal enmity with anyone and I had no quarrel with anyone. Whoever attacked me didn't even care about my age, he said. The only fault was that I speak the truth and I will continue to speak, God willing, he said in another tweet. On Thursday, during a speech at a seminar in Islamabad on the regime change and its fallout on Pakistan, Amir targeted the powerful military establishment for its role in Pakistan's politics. The seminar was also attended by former Prime Minister Imran Khan. He referred to the army generals as property dealers and even suggested removing the portraits of Pakistan's founder Muhammad Ali Jinnah and the country's national poet Allama Iqbal and replacing them with the poetry property dealers. In an indirect satire मार रहा है यार. In an indirect reference to Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa, Amir said he was into his 6th year of tenure and looking for another extension. Punjab Chief Minister Hamza Shehbaz was sought a report from police over the assault and ordered that the culprits be arrested at the earliest. अब यार इसमें से क्या लेने लायक है? एक तो आप वही कह सकते हो कि देखो कंपेयरिंग कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस, डेमोक्रेसी, रूल ऑफ लॉ. हमारे यहाँ पे वो सेडिशन के लॉ को लेकर के इतना वो चलता है. कम से कम पॉलिसी पकड़ के लेके जाती ना. ये तो देखो 73 साल के बुढ़े को ऐसे मार रहे हैं, पीट रहे हैं. तो और एक अच्छा इंसाइट ये है कि जैसे आपने कभी ध्यान दिया हो या नहीं पता नहीं, मतलब ऐसा कैसे हो पा रहा है कि पाकिस्तान के ऊपर मिलिट्री हावी हो जाती है गवर्नमेंट के अंदर. सिविलियन गवर्नमेंट आती है, 4 दिन रुकती है, उन्हीं के इशारों पे नाचती है और निकल जाती है. वाई इज़ इट सो? वाई डज इट हैपन सो? एक मैंने किन्हीं आई थिंक रिटायर्ड पाकिस्तानी जनरल का ही इंटरव्यू सुना था कहीं पे. वो बता रहे थे कि द प्रीमाइस ऑफ मिलिट्री बीइंग एबल टू गवर्न द कंट्री, जबकि हम दोनों प्रीटी मच सिमिलर पास्ट से आए हैं और हम दोनों सिमिलर डेमोक्रेटिक सिस्टम के साथ में शुरू हुए थे, बट फिर भी ऐसा बार बार क्यों हो जाता है कि मिलिट्री टेक्स ओवर. तो उनके यहाँ का प्रीमाइस स्पेशली ऐसा है. देखो ऐसे ऐसे प्रीमाइसेस के ऊपर नेशन अगर आप बनाओगे तो ऑफ कोर्स यही होगा जो पाकिस्तान के साथ हो रहा है. उनका प्रीमाइस ये था सर कि हिंदुस्तान जो कि हमारा नेबर है इज़ अ हिंदू कंट्री. वी आर इस्लामिक, सो वी आर नेचुरली एनिमीज. ठीक है, फॉर द पाकिस्तानीज टू बिलीव. And though they didn't pay attention of course to the fact that we house more number of Muslims than their entire population, but still okay. So now because enemy is at the gates, तो इसलिए जो सियासत की बागडोर है वो मिलिट्री के हाथ में ही अच्छी है. समझ रहे हैं आप? खतरा है हमेशा lingering. And you can see the culture thereafter. मिलिट्री कैसे गवर्न करती है, कितना करप्शन है और ये प्रॉपर्टी डीलर्स हैं. ठीक है. चाइना स्टॉप. इसीलिए डेमोक्रेसी बेहतर है यार, अच्छा सिस्टम. मैं नहीं कह रहा हमारे यहाँ परफेक्ट है, बट हम कोशिश तो करते हैं ना उसे वैसा बनाने की, इसीलिए बेहतर है हम. China's top diplomat visits Myanmar amid opposition protest. बताओ, इनको रोक सकता कोई? China's top diplomat on Saturday arrived on his first visit to Myanmar since the military seized power last year to attend a regional meeting that the government said was a recognition of its legitimacy, and opponents protested as a violation of peace efforts. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi will join counterparts from Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam in a meeting of the Langkang Mekong Cooperation Group in the central city of Bagan, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. ध्यान दे लीजिएगा सर इसके बारे में कि ये बागान करके कहाँ पर है, हमारे यहाँ नहीं है, चाय के बागान म्यांमार में. The grouping is a Chinese-led initiative that includes the countries of the Mekong Delta, a potential source of regional tensions due to an increasing number of hydroelectric projects that are altering the flow and raising concerns of ecological damage. China has built 10 dams along the upper stretch of Mekong. Military government spokesman Major General Zhao Min-tun told a news conference in the capital Naypyidaw on Friday that the attendance of the foreign ministers at the meeting was a recognition of Myanmar's sovereignty and its government. He said the ministers will sign memorandums of understanding and contracts. He did not elaborate. It's unclear whether Wang would meet Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, the foreign minister of Myanmar's shadow government, which opposes the ruling military council, protested the Bagan meeting, saying any such efforts in partnership with the Myanmar's military violate the will of the people and undermine the community building. कितनी सारी अलग अलग बातें हैं. Explain में क्या लिखा है सर? China is Myanmar's biggest trading partner and an old ally. Beijing has invested billions of dollars in Myanmar's mines, oil and gas pipelines, and other infrastructure, and is its major arms supplier, together like Russia. कुछ खास मिला नहीं इसमें से. ठीक है, एक ही बात है कि चाइना का ये दिख रहा है कि चाइना बेवकूफ़ों की तरह डैम बनाए जा रहा है. कोई रोको इनको यार. Dams are the bombs of tomorrow. Japan's secret to taming COVID-19. Peer pressure, fear of public shaming. एथिक्स के लिए है बात. आपको समझ आएगी ये दोनों ये बातें. ये पीयर प्रेशर, फियर ऑफ पब्लिक शेमिंग. ठीक है ना, हम नहीं कर पाएंगे वो. तो अब हम क्या करेंगे, थोड़े बहुत कॉलम्स देखते हैं. चिदम्बरम जी हैं, ये अगेंस्ट एस्टैब्लिशमेंट होंगे, पक्की बात है. इनको बाद में देख लेंगे, पहले इनको देख लेते हैं मैडम जी को. Islamism has no place in India. The sordid shenanigans in Maharashtra ended last week with the toppling of the government, but the drama of this political saga made us almost forget the barbaric jihadi killing in Udaipur. This is unfortunate. नहीं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, याद है हमको. In my view, the beheading of Kanhaiya Lal and the way in which a video of it was posted on the internet is more significant than politics because it seems to mark a new phase in the spread of radical Islam in India. ये मैंने भी आपको शायद ये बताया था कल परसों कि भाई यार ये जिस तरह से ये इंसिडेंट हुआ, एक बात होती है कि भाई कम्युनलिज्म है, दूसरा है कि चलो पॉलिटिकल गेंस के लिए लोग बाग यूज़ कर रहे हैं और लोग बाग आपस में लड़ रहे हैं, हिंदू मुस्लिम हो रहा है. लेकिन ये भाई इतनी चीज़ तो आप 2-3 एक दिन के अखबार से क्लियर है ही है कि दिस वाज बीइंग कंडक्टेड फ्रॉम आउट ऑफ पाकिस्तान एंड लाइक देयर इज सीरियस नेशनल सिक्योरिटी कंसर्न. इंसिडेंट से ऐसे समझ आता है. आज के भी अखबार में ऊपर देखा था हमने, कोई अमरावती वाला भी कुछ चल रहा है वो, बट खतरनाक. Internet is more significant than politics because it seems to mark a new phase in the spread of radical Islam in India. The killers were clearly inspired by similar killings in the Islamic Republic next door and by the savagery that we routinely saw when ISIS still had control of its truly repugnant caliphate. आइसिस वगैरह के वीडियोस पॉपुलराइज हुए थे, यही तो था, यही तो करते थे. There have been hundreds of jihadi killings in India, especially in Kashmir, but this beheading in Udaipur indicates that the fanaticism that defines radical Islam has gone up a few notches. Fanaticism की definition एक बार देखिए. In the horrific video that the killers posted, they can be seen smiling proudly and flaunting their machetes, यानी बंदूक नहीं वो काटने का. Because in their sick, twisted minds, they were convinced that by killing an innocent man for the sake of their prophet, they would be on a fast track to Islamic paradise. यार ये टीचिंग कहाँ से आई मुझे? I have very less knowledge. Someone please, if you know aware enough, I would like them to please elaborate to me कि ये इतना extremism, is it really the part of the original canons of the Islamic religion? Or as far as my understanding goes, it says that after Muhammad, or after some few people who were said to be the authority in the olden times, who wrote hadiths and all, it became a system that whoever somehow acquired the power and got to sit in the Khalifa's seat, he was as good as God. He could give laws, and that interpretation of you know religious laws later on kept on piling up with several certain people coming one after the other, and that actually corrupted the whole thing. I don't know what brought this extremism, this kind of fanaticism. Like, अगर ये चलो ये कह देंगे कि हर रिलीजन के अंदर होते हैं सर फैनाटिक्स, तो फंडामेंटलिस्ट तो हर जगह, बट इस रिलीजन के अंदर ये ज़्यादा प्रमोट क्यों कर रहा है? इसमें से ही ज़्यादा क्यों निकलते हैं? ऐसा क्या है? आई वुड लाइक टू नो इफ समवन कुड लेट मी. ओके. The mullahs and madrasas that put these ludicrous ideas into their heads are as responsible for the beheading of Kanhaiya Lal as his killers. Correct. Arif Muhammad Khan, whom I am proud to call an old friend, has become the voice of sanity in an insane time. It made absolute sense to me when he said last week that it was useless to react to symptoms and do nothing about destroying the roots of the problem. Will someone in Delhi please listen? सही बात है जी, हाँ रूट में जाइए. तकलीफ कहाँ है? ये इन मुद्दों के ऊपर खेल कर तो खाली वही पॉलिटिकल उल्लू सीधे हो रहे हैं. Jihadist Islam is a sickness that is crammed into the heads of small children in the mosque schools they attend, usually because their parents are too poor to afford proper schools. So far, nobody has made a serious effort to inspect the curriculum in these schools, but it is time that this happened. It is from dodgy religious books taught by semi literate mullahs that Islamism comes. It is for Islamic scholars and seminaries to bring more enlightened ideas into madrasas. But if they are not prepared to do it, then it must be done by the state. Yes, now it is time. It cannot be said loudly enough that India is mercifully not an Islamic country. So there is no room for schools that teach children to think in terms of infidels and believers. This is another idea perpetuated by madrasas that must go. If there are Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist schools that are spreading ideas like this, then they also need to be ordered to reform their curriculums. Correct? There are Muslims who believe that Hindutva is a mirror image of Islamism. Hmm. It is not. We have recently seen far too many fanatical Hindu priests preaching genocide at religious gatherings, and they deserve to be locked up. But because the distinction between believers and infidels does not exist in Indic religions, there is less reason for fanatical Hindus to go around beheading people. ये अच्छी बात बोली है मैडम ने कि मिरर इमेज वाली बात नहीं है, बहुत डिफरेंस है. बट आई डोंट कम्प्लीटली एग्री विद हर सेइंग कि इंडिक रिलीजन के अंदर देयर डज नॉट एग्जिस्ट सच अ डिस्टिंक्शन बिटवीन, जैसे कि इस्लाम में एक तो है बिलीवर अल्लाह का बंदा और एक है काफिर इनफिडेल. हमारे यहाँ पर भी है. मेरी नानी वगैरह जब सुनाया करते थे तो कहते थे कि मलेच used to be the term that we used to address so-called these people coming in from north, west or say Arab. हाँ ये अच्छी बात है कि that did not popularize into becoming such a fanaticist. टेंडेंसी। तो है तो सही, हमारे यहाँ पर भी कम नहीं है, डिवाइडिंग टेंडेंसीज काफ़ी हैं। पर बात ये कि यार ये दिस इज़ बेसिकली religious waves taking over state, which is dangerous. Having said this, I admit it would be stupid to pretend that much poison and hatred has not been spread in recent years by Hindus who believe that Hindutva is a better idea than traditional Hinduism. Correct? ये भी कम नहीं है. These people seem not to have noticed that the real harm done by spreading hatred is to India and not our Muslim communities. When mobs wearing saffron scarves lynch some random Muslim cattle trader, they make India look bad. When they demand that Muslim shops be boycotted, they do the same. When BJP spokesmen vomit bile against Islam and Muslims, they cause incalculable harm, as the Supreme Court pointed out when Nupur Sharma appealed last week for the cases against her to be transferred to Delhi. Using unusually strong language, the judges hearing her plea upbraided her for igniting emotions with her comments on the Prophet. This lady is single handedly responsible for what is happening in the country. She and her loose tongue have set the country on fire. She has been suspended by the BJP, and spokesmen for the government of India have dismissed her as representing a fringe element. If only this were true. As someone who is attacked constantly by those who speak for Hindutva, I can say with certainty that she represents the mainstream and not the fringe. She actually is, yes, she is actually representing the major unpad Hindutva promoters जो कि कम्युनलिस्ट और डिवाइडिंग लाइंस के ऊपर बात करते हैं. This is not a fringe element. There has been a campaign on social media in support of her, and prominent BJP voices have spoken up in her defense. Fanaticism exists in every religion, but it is only the violent ideology spawned by Islam that makes ordinary Muslims go off and kill people in ways that are primitive, barbaric, and utterly unacceptable. Radical Islam has become a problem even in Islamic countries, but in India it has no place at all. This needs to be made clear to madrasas that teach small children to think of beheading infidels as a noble act and not a horrific crime. The beheading of Kanhaiya Lal has caused so much outrage in India that there are demands that his killers be summarily executed in a public place. This cannot happen in a country that believes in the rule of law. क्यों? रीज़न, उन्होंने जो किया वो अपने पैथोलॉजिकल माइंड के चलते किया, पर हम जब उन्हें सज़ा देने की बात कर रहे हैं एज अ क्रिमिनल जस्टिस सिस्टम, तो वी एक्चुअली रिप्रेजेंट द कलेक्टिव इंटेलिजेंस, कलेक्टिव इंटेलेक्ट ऑफ आवर सोसाइटी. उसी से बनाना है ऐसा इंस्टीट्यूशन. तो वो दो लोगों का पैथोलॉजिकल माइंड, गिरी हुई सोच, और हमारा एज अ सोसाइटी कलेक्टिव सेंस ऑफ जस्टिस, क्या वो दोनों सेम लेवल पे हैं? दैट इज़ वाई this cannot happen in a country that believes in the rule of law. But if their trial and punishment is conducted at the usual languid pace of our justice system, the anger and hatred that exist between Hindus and Muslims will intensify. This is something that we cannot afford at a time when tensions are already at boiling point. हाँ, तो जल्द से जल्द इनको कुछ करना चाहिए सर. गाल सही है, I believe. Ballot is in the secrecy of the ballot. अच्छा जी. The Rajya Sabha elections are unique in that respect, where voting is not secret. The MLAs elect their state Rajya Sabha MPs, and as the process stands now, have to show the votes to their party's representatives. दिखाना पड़ता है उनको. Whip वाली बात की. However, the open ballot voting system is a 2003 addition to our Rajya Sabha electoral system. Until 1998, Rajya Sabha elections were the bastion of party discipline, their outcome a foregone conclusion. Candidates nominated by parties would win uncontested. Voting only took place when there were more contestants than vacant seats in the state. Electoral contest was usually among independent candidates. The June 1998 Rajya Sabha elections in Maharashtra changed this position. 7 contenders were in the fray for 6 seats. Okay. The Congress had fielded 2 candidates, Najma Heptullah, who had served 3 terms in the upper house, and Ram Pradhan, a former Maharashtra cadre IS officer and ex-Union Home Secretary. The Shiv Sena's candidates were its sitting MP Satish Pradhan and media personality Pritesh Nandi, not important. Pramod Mahajan, who had lost the Lok Sabha elections earlier that year, was contesting for the BJP. There were 2 independent candidates, Media Baron Vijay Darda, whom the Congress supported, and former Railway Minister Suresh Kalmadi, whom the Shiv Sena supported. Kalmadi had rebelled against the Congress. The Congress had enough votes to ensure the victory of both its candidates. But in a surprising turn of events, Congress candidate Ram Pradhan, a close aide of Sonia Gandhi, lost. An independent candidate sailed through. क्या करना है इस बात का? The votes cast by MLAs were secret and Congress MLAs defied their party's voting instructions, causing Pradhan's defeat. लेने के बाद वही हुई ना, horse trading हो गई. Reports suggest that legislators from other parties also cross-voted. Pradhan's loss reverberated in all political circles to a point that parties started thinking about steps to rein in their MLAs. The solution eventually came from the Ethics Committee of the Rajya Sabha, which was set up in 1997 and was headed by Rajya Sabha MP and former Maharashtra Chief Minister S.B. Chauhan. In its first report on December 1998, the committee observed that money and muscle power played an increasing role in Rajya Sabha elections, suggesting, in order not to allow big money and other considerations to play mischief, the committee is of the view that instead of a secret ballot, the question of holding the elections to the Rajya Sabha and the legislative councils in states by open ballot may be examined. The Atal Bihari Vajpayee government in 2001 acted on the suggestion. Arun Jaitley, the law minister at the time, introduced a bill in parliament to amend the law relating to the Rajya Sabha elections with an open voting system and the removal of domiciliary requirements for contesting the polls. ये इम्पॉर्टेंट है भाई, ये सीधा एमसीक्यू की तरह आता है और बहुत बार कंफ्यूज कर जाते हैं. डोमिसिलियरी रिक्वायरमेंट्स हटा दी गई थी 2001 में ही. डोमिसिलियरी रिक्वायरमेंट यानी आपको उस कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी का होना कोई ज़रूरी नहीं है राज्यसभा के अंदर रिप्रेजेंट करने के लिए. Kuldeep Nair, a veteran journalist who was a nominated Rajya Sabha MP, challenged its constitutional validity in the Supreme Court, arguing that the concept of open ballot would defeat the attainment of free and fair election. The court overruled this contention and held the law to be constitutional. It reasoned that the secrecy of the ballot is a vital principle for ensuring free and fair elections. The higher principle, however, is free and fair elections and purity of elections. If secrecy becomes a source for corruption, then sunlight and transparency have the capacity to remove it. सही बात है जी. अल्टीमेटली फ्री और फेयरनेस ऑफ इलेक्शंस है, उसी के लिए सीक्रेट बैलेट डाला है और उसी के लिए ज़रूरत पड़ी तो सीक्रेट बैलेट हटा भी देंगे. But an open ballot has not helped bring purity to the Rajya Sabha elections or stopped party candidates from losing. A common response of the parties, as evident in the recent Rajya Sabha elections, has been to herd their MLAs to hotels and resorts to prevent poaching. As Niloptal Basu, a CPM Rajya Sabha MP, said during the debate on the open ballot law, we should, as political parties, seriously introspect as to how the principles on which political parties function can be rectified, as to how we can recapture certain healthy practices in politics. The problem of indiscipline and the problem of dissidence can never be stopped in this manner unless we improve our system of internal democracy, unless we have healthy practices. Internal democracy again becomes the Lynch term. This is actually the solution of all of this, and this is actually a thing which is even recommended by so many electoral reform committees, but then not taken action upon because this is not in the interest of, the vested interests, you see. इंटरनल डेमोक्रेसी यानी ठीक है, आप इलेक्शंस लड़ते हैं, चुनाव लड़ते हैं, बनते हैं कुछ एमएलए एमपी, पर ये जो पार्टीज़ हैं जो कि मेजर तबका हैं जहाँ से इलेक्शंस लड़ने वाले आते हैं कैंडिडेट्स, उनके अंदर खुद के अंदर कोई डेमोक्रेसी नहीं है सर. उनके अंदर इंटरनल इलेक्शंस होने चाहिए डिफरेंट पोजीशंस को एक्वायर करने के लिए. सेक्रेटरी कौन बनेगा? राहुल गांधी नहीं बनेगा यार। क्यों बनेगा? कोई पसंद ही नहीं कर रहा है तो वोट कराओ। हर बार सोनिया गांधी क्यों बनेगी? दिखाई भी नहीं देती है, इतनी बूढ़ी हो गई है। क्यों क्यों? इतने बड़े बड़े नेता बैठे हैं ना कांग्रेस में, अच्छे अच्छे। वो लोग अगर अपनी मेरिट के बेस पे अगर पार्टी के अंदर अपनी पोजीशंस हायर मतलब पहुंचेंगे, तो देयर इज़ अ बिग चांस कि यार ये इस तरह की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ेगी। पार्टीज अपने आप में भी डिसिप्लिन्ड होंगी और हाँ मतलब दैट्स ऑल। अगले में देखते हैं।